The full moon in Gemini on November 27th is going to unlock a barrier of language that you may not have known how to overcome before. And what that language is actually your authenticity. And I'm going to start this with a controversial debate of I don't like the word authenticity, or at least how it's been used in the last few years. It's just like, I'm just being my authentic self. That doesn't mean you have to suck. This full moon can very much open doors to people who are willing to actually tap into their truth, not any facade that people need to see in order for them to give you the social upper hand. And to be very clear, this full moon is going to separate the real in your life from the fake. Think back to your Thanksgiving of this 2023. Are you even in the position to say all the things that are actually on your mind? Do you know enough to debate the other philosophies of people if you don't agree? And are you willing to just hear people for what they have to say versus trying to turn them in and make them think the same way as you? This full moon in Gemini is going to be a rude awakening for people who need to assume that everyone has to think like them. The duality of Gemini here is showing that there needs to still be communication. However, how honest are you being in those communications? We know people who could talk a great talk. They can make you think whatever's going on. They can tell you all this good stuff that you want to hear. But are they willing to actually walk the walk that goes along with the claims that they're making? Are you staying diligent enough to make sure that you're putting in the action that is required and not just the words that are supposed to be spoken? Opposite to this moon in Gemini, we have Mars in Sagittarius. Mars has been traveling with the sun in Scorpio over the last couple of weeks before you're seeing this. And what happened during that time? We were exposed to all the dark corruption and terrible things that are happening all around the world. Not just in one country, not just in two, but at the very least 8 that we can name. And truth be told, it was a very hard time for a lot of people having to feel the weight of the world in the events that are occurring in the process. Now, when bad things happen, you want to know what happens? Everyone has an opinion. And there are multiple sides to every single story at hand. What has also come out in that last bit is who's actually willing to have their own mindset about things. Or are you just picking up on whatever the last news station may have told you? Or what your family and friends think that you're supposed to think. What's happening this full moon is that you have to gear yourself in the direction that your intuition is actually guiding you in. And if that's not something you can completely abandon your life to go do, how can you slowly implement those things in the process so it becomes a part of what you're trying to do, the energies that you're actually pushing forward into the world? This is a full moon to change your mindset behind the work that's also required to make the things that you say actually happen. Now, mind you, full moons are releases. So what are we releasing? The old conversation about us, the old story about us that we no longer resonate with. We live in a very digital world, and because of that, everyone gets to dump in their opinions all the time. And so here we are having to sort out the real from the fake. And with this Saturn squaring this full moon that just went direct in Pisces, Saturn is trying to gear your imagination towards the fact that you can make magic happen as long as you speak it into the world and provide action afterward. Most people think intentions and affirmations are enough, and they're great, and they're 100% something to aid you in that journey. But how are you going to sit there, try to manifest and release like a partnership or something, and not go out afterward and think they're going to come to your front door? And yes, I know I'm a little bit on it right now, but it's finally Sagittarius season, and I am so pleased. Speaking of the truth and everything in your life, I have my Black Friday sale on right now, so if you want to make sure your boy has a phenomenal birthday this season, this would probably be a great time for you to check in and get a reading. But seriously though, I'm nice, so like that's if you know, you know. And also part of this video feels a little scattered, and that's kind of on purpose because Gemini has this ability to kind of bring in multiple points, multiple storylines, and then converse everything all at the same time. This is because the Gemini air can see the perspective of everyone, of the regular everyday person, as well as the smartest and most intellectual person in the process. Now, because of this full moon and the slight square over to Saturn and everything else, I actually highly recommend something that I didn't think I would initially when I started talking about this full moon. And I really intrinsically feel like the difference between you and the true success that you want to bring is actually within a certain amount of routine. Now, I have the feeling like you can make this routine whatever it is that you want. But let's say you want to become a star athlete. You think Michael Jordan got up one day, said, yeah, let's do it, and then suddenly became the best in the world? No. This is a full moon to remind you that practice makes perfect, and preparation is the key to your success. And speaking of Sag, on this day, Mercury in Sagittarius is making a square over to Neptune. And this goes back to the same story where I'm like, hey, that Thanksgiving table that has a lot of differing opinions, but you still need to gather together to have that conversation. The way that you approach your dreams can dramatically change as long as you're willing to admit the actual truth of the matter to yourself, which is something that not a lot of people want to do or like to do. And most often try to avoid as hard as possible, but this is not the full moon to do that. If there's some tough conversations that need to be had, have that tough conversation. At the height of the full moon, maybe not. But it's probably going to happen anyway, so you might as well get ready to do so. And as you can see, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of oomph that's coming through, and that's because the Mars is on the sun. Mars in Sagittarius loves to explore. They like adventures with no cause. They're usually rebels without a cause. Gemini is the trickster. They love to have a little bit of fun, spread a little mischief, spread a little cheer, mindful, whatever. Just Geminis just make things up, and they have this uncanny ability to see beyond what normal people can see. Because when Gemini speaks to you and listens to you, they hear beyond the words that you're actually saying. So on this full moon in Gemini, how can you hear beyond the words that people are actually saying and the conversations they're trying to have, and really attune to the energy, spirit, and source of where those conversations are coming from? For those of you who do want more on this full moon in Gemini, I'm going to be going live on my YouTube about it, and I'm actually providing a class. The thing that we need to give Gemini the most credit for is that they're willing to say what everyone's thinking and is too afraid to say. So as this full moon in Gemini happens, how can you start speaking in the world? Maybe it's time for you to start that podcast. Maybe it's time for you to start bringing in your favorite hobbies into the world. Or maybe you have been talking too much and it's your time to just call it quits for a bit. Sometimes not everyone has to keep talking. All this to say is that this full moon is about you finding your language. The more that you listen to your intuition at this time, the easier the ideas start to flow. The more people are willing to hear what you have to say about it. And the closer you get to actually bringing the magic that you know is inside right in front of you. So what are you afraid of again? Speak up.